Okay, hello everyone, and welcome to our event today. If you would please, I see people are popping where they're from into the chat box. We've got some familiar names and some new names. We're very excited about this event today. We've had the most people registered for this event than any other previous ILCA event. I think that speaks volumes, tons to the subject and the person that is hosting the event, as well as to the traction we've been gaining at ILCA with getting our organization and our mission out there to promote and spread the practice of language coaching. My name is Carrie McKinnon, and I'm a co-founder of the International Language Coaching Association. On this call, we have Gabriela Kovacs, who is my other co-founder. And we are so excited to host this latest event in the Expert 2020 series, where we invite in our ILCA founding board members to come in and give a talk in their area of expertise. Today, we've got David Guerrero, who we are so excited to have on board, and I'm going to let him introduce himself and get started here in just a moment. I do want to mention that we have a summer intensive program available right now at ILCA with a few spots left. We are almost completely full with it, but there are a few spots. It's a remote live online training course that's going to be held on July 2nd, 7th, and 9th. It's going to provide the foundations and real details of how to get started language coaching. So if you're interested in that, head to our website. I'll pop in the link into the chat, but you can see it here on this slide as well. Thank you for joining us. Thank you, David, for doing this, tackling this exciting subject of motivation. And let's go ahead, and I'm going to turn it over to you, David. You're going to need to unmute yourself.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me? Okay.
I can hear you, David. You're good.
Okay. Let me just hide this here. Okay. Oh, sorry. Okay, so hello, everyone. Yeah, thank you very much for, to the International Language Coaching Association for giving me the time this month to present. I'm really happy to be here. And I would also like to thank everyone here today. I hope you find this talk useful. Okay, so let's start. Okay, so, well, further, my name is, like Carrie said, David Guerrero. And this is Consciousness, Bridging the Motivation Gap. So a little bit about myself first. I've been helping people what I call their English allergy for more than 5 years in Japan. As many people may know, if they have visited Japan, hay fever is really bad here, but English allergy, I think, is worse. So it's a big challenge to work in this industry in Japan. Today, I'm going to show you how to use coaching as a tool to increase learners' motivation to study English. But before that, let me start with a story. I was born in Colombia, and I went to what we call there an intensive English school. In high school, I had two English teachers. One was called Giovanni, he was Colombian, and Maggie, she was American. So I'm not going to go deeper into this today, but just let me say that both the best English teacher and the best Japanese teacher I've ever had were Colombian. But my point today is that I barely remember what Maggie's textbook lessons were like. It was pretty standard, just follow the textbook, do the activities. But I really, really remember Giovanni's like weird approach to teach English. And the reason of this is that he was really into creating contents for the learners to encourage them to learn different skills while they learn English. I guess nowadays terms like CLIL and maybe now language coaching are becoming popular, but at that time, I don't think he really knew what he was doing, but it was really good. So he was like going into the right path, I guess. So let me give you a little bit of the context about Japan at the moment. So the first thing is that 72% of Japanese people between the ages of 20 and 49, they said that they cannot speak English. They can just communicate using some very basic words. So this is the reality of the market here. If we go into the corporate side, 15% of the staff can hold everyday conversation in English, but this is just with a lot of difficulty. And I would say that maybe 5% of the population in English could call themselves like bilingual, that they can talk English confidently. Another important statistic here is that only roughly 60% of high school students, they say that they don't like English. So when they go to university and in the future, like they go to work, English is a big challenge for companies, especially if we talk about global companies or international companies. So yeah, those numbers are not very encouraging, but I guess that's a big opportunity for us. So if you want to come to Japan, I think there's a lot of room for you to be here. So these figures allow us to see that there's still a lot of room, like I said, to improve the way we approach TEFL and like ESL and the way we teach English. And I see that every day we have new textbooks coming out. They show like these innovative methods, and every day you have like this is the new thing. But I think a lot of people miss the point. I think a lot of people just think about their own approach is the best one, but they don't really think about the learner. And that's exactly what I tried to do. And that's what I'm going to try to show you today. So before moving forward, I want to talk about a very simple thing that I realized as well when I was doing my job. And it's something that really changed the way I approach language education, especially like we're doing now in my company. This is something I guess could be common sense for a lot of people, but I haven't seen that much people in the industry doing it. And that's why I guess when I joined, the association was like a great opportunity to start working and expanding coaching as a skill to use in language education. Just about my job a little bit is that my job is pretty unique in Japan, in the sense that most companies hire outsourced teachers to teaching. Hello. To teaching house. However, oh, okay. However, most of the executives are.
Sorry, David, I muted everyone.
Yeah.
Okay, you're good.
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you. So as I was saying, my job is pretty unique in Japan. Most companies hire outsourced teachers to teach in-house or send employees to take lessons in what we call eikaiwa school. Basically, an eikaiwa is like an English conversation school. I guess something like Berlitz, right? But my job is a little bit different. I am a full-time employee for my company, and I'm in a team that we call right now the language education team. And what we do is we try to find where the language issues are and try to kind of break this language barrier that we are finding that we have inside teams in our company. But when I just joined Mercari, I wasn't really sure what to do because, okay, of course, I have to teach English, but was that really the best way to accomplish my goal? So I'm going to give you here, everyone, let me see, about 3 minutes or so. Maybe you can discuss on the chat, or you can just think about this on your own. What's your job? It's like a very simple question, but at the same time, it's something that we need to really understand and we really need to think about when we do what we do. So I think there's a timer. Maybe there's a timer running. I'm just going to leave it here for like 10 seconds or so.
Yeah, we got your timer running and I popped it into the chat for people to answer there as well.
Okay, thanks. We don't really need the full 3 minutes, I guess, because people can just keep typing there. So I'm going to continue if that's okay. So here I have teacher, and I guess a lot of people maybe said teacher, maybe they say trainer, they say instructor, they say coach, right? They say facilitator, or there are many like these job words, these titles that we use to describe our jobs. But I was thinking about my job in a little bit of a different way. So when we think about a teacher, as a teacher, I'm giving learners something, but I can't really make sure that they get this thing, right? For example, let's say I have a student that is blind, right? So if I use the same approach that I use with everyone, that is not going to work. What happens is that learners could be blind to the styles that we use if they're visual or they like to listen more to things or they're like more kinesthetic, right? They have different approaches to learning. So that's why these kind of off-the-shelves methods or like these one-size-fits-all approaches don't work really well with everyone. So I realized that I was not really teaching here when I was doing my job. What I was doing was helping people learn. This means that my job is not the role that I perform, but the goal that I'm pursuing. And this was really powerful when I started thinking like, oh, I'm not really here in this company to teach people. I need to find a way to help them learn a new language. And then it's really changed the whole picture because I was trying to place the ball on the learner's side of the court, basically having a mindset that could make the learners accountable of their own learning process. So, well, these are the takeaways that hopefully we'll try to get at the end of this talk. So I'm going to give you the 3 points, the 3 main things I'm going to try to do today. The first one is just try to explain a case study where I use coaching effectively to motivate busy learners. The second one is to introduce a little bit what conscious coaching is or conscious business coaching is and how I apply it in teaching English as a foreign language. And I'm going to show you a framework. Actually, it's a framework that we are using right now in our company that really focuses on self-directed study. Okay, so this is like the second mini activity here. So on the chat as well, if you want to start this discussion, I'd like to know what challenges do business learners face when studying English? If you maybe don't work with business learners, you could just answer with your own learners. What is like this biggest challenge that you have to face when you're trying to study English with them?
Okay, I don't know whether you can see this or not, David, but we're getting some feedback. So confidence, lack of opportunity to practice, confidence again, time management, not sure, Bulu, how you mean that, structure and fluency, confidence of the students. Yeah, so this confidence issue is coming up quite a lot. And issues actually which are not related, understanding different accents, mindset, lack of time. Okay, thank you. Not having an English environment, speaking practice, and I guess you're going to be interpreting what this means. Time to study, opportunities to use English, vocabulary mastery. I think that's the first related to language.
Perfect. Those sound great. Thank you very much, Gabriela.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
No, thank you very much. So yeah, so I guess it really depends. Each person is very unique and they have their own challenges. Like time management, for example, is a great one. The other one you mentioned was like motivation, especially like in Japan. That's something I see every day. I don't know why, but Japanese people their motivation is very low when they learn a new language. So that's a big wall we have to break basically when we try to study a new language. So let's continue here a little bit. So in my experience though, when you analyze this and you talk about like, I have no time, I have no motivation, I'm shy, I would just start talking with my learners, with students, and the root issue for me was that they didn't really have motivation. Especially intrinsic motivation. It's like, yeah, I don't make time for it, but why don't you? Like, if you understand a little bit deeper, if you really want to do something, you're going to find the time for it, for example, right? But this root cause for me happened in many situations. Like I saw many students with this issue, I could say. And it was very interesting to find that if you don't really have this motivation, you don't really prioritize learning and you don't really enjoy the process, and then you just give up, right? I guess if you read Krashen's affective filter hypothesis, he talks about this, basically saying that low motivation blocks the brain and you can't really learn if you don't have motivation. So the takeaway here is, okay, do not give up, right? So when I got to the company, basically the problem I had was I needed to create a study method that led to high levels of motivation and meaningful improvement. This is a company, so I was kind of evaluated on this. So I needed to come up with like KPIs numbers to really show the progress of people. Then I thought, okay, what can I do? And I had this idea of coaching at the time, and I tried to work around coaching to find a way to resolve these tasks, resolve these issues. But when I did my first research, I guess this was like maybe 1 year, 2 years ago. I was in the ITEFL, I think in Liverpool. It was last year, I think. And then I went to this language coaching session, and I was like, this is not what I want. This is very technical. It was really grammar based, and like, this is not really what I'm looking for. So I tried to do more research, and I came up with this own thing, I guess, at first, but I did a lot of research, read a lot of coaching approaches to come up with this program to use coaching as a powerful tool to increase motivation in my learners. The issue here, I guess, was like, how can I maximize the study time? Because this was another issue. My team is very small. We only have like 3 people teaching or like doing this, but we had like 150 learners. So we cannot really, like, lessons were not an option, basically. So what we decided to do is just this DIY, do it yourself approach, and just go back a little bit to just self-study as the main source of getting input for the learners. Okay, so just basically combining these 2 things, just this do-it-yourself plus coaching, we came up with what we call the manager's course at Mercari. So I think I mentioned this a little bit before, but I work at Mercari, so I'm going to introduce my company a little bit. Mercari is a C2C, so customer-to-customer business marketplace. Basically, it's like eBay. It's like the biggest one that is many people could be familiar with, or like Mercado Libre in Latin America. I don't know, in Europe, I don't know, Shopify or something like that. But yeah, so basically we just match buyers with sellers, and they just sell between just 2 customers. Basically, that's the C2C part. In our company, we have 1,800 people, 40 different nationalities, and right now 50% of the engineers work in English. Of course, this is the reason why people need to learn English. So before continuing here, I'm going to just start with this disclaimer. So I'm going to talk about a case study of 2 people in this company, 2 engineering managers. These engineering managers were B1 level when we started in the coaching process. However, I believe this methodology could be applied to most adult learners in different contexts. But maybe we need to make some changes in the way we approach if we try maybe, for example, with A2 or even like A1 level learners, because there's big differences between the levels. So the background of the learners, so before starting this coaching program that we call, or this manager's course, these learners were having 2 lessons a week, just like a regular lesson with like a curriculum, like a textbook, and they had homework. So let's say they were studying about 3 hours a week. I guess that's a lot for some people, but for my company, that was not enough. Like, they needed a faster approach. They wanted people to study more. These are the learners when we started this manager's course. This was September last year. So as you can see, both of them are B1. I say here low. This is the score that we gave them with a test that we also created in-house. So we have different like bands. So we have B1 low, mid, and high of this test. As I said, both of them are engineering managers. They're Japanese. They're in their 30s, 40s. And this is like the goals they share when they just first joined this program. One of them wanted to lead his team in English, and he really liked tech conferences. So he wanted to organize tech conferences. And learner B wanted to communicate with other teams and increase performance of his own team. Okay, so I'm going to give you a couple of seconds here. This is like a testimonial I had from both of them 6 months, not really 6 months ago now, I guess, well, in September when we started the course with them. Okay, but so as I said before, the company really wanted to start a project to make all their managers B2 in a year or around a year. It was very bold, and we are still in that process because we have more managers every 3 months, and we're still trying to get them to B2. So that was, the whole project started because like they felt two lessons a week were not enough. Okay, so now that we kind of established that we're going to try to find what that motivation is, like this big challenge, the question would be how to motivate people, what motivates people to study English. So again, if you can just go in the chat, and maybe if Gabriela can help me and read some of these answers.
Sure, yeah, okay.
Okay.
If you can start typing in, then I can start reading. Okay, a future job or career.
Great, yeah.
Job promotion, traveling, holidays, promotion again. Okay, I'm gonna add my 2 cents. And topics. Job opportunities, career, family members who only speak English. That's
it's a great one. Yeah.
I wrote relevant topics, so it's got to be very relevant. Okay, status in the workplace and social arenas. Communication with English friends. I think we have to be like ads, try to catch our students' attention the first time. Okay, the teaching itself.
Yeah. It's a great one.
Learn how to communicate with native speakers of English. Okay, So basically there's a wide range of things coming in here. If there's any more, then now, or we'll move on.
Okay. Yeah, that's fine. So, okay. So you can just also reflect on your own. I heard a couple of them, like traveling, like things like that. And I guess I'm going to explain a little bit, but like some of these things, like a job promotion or so, it has like this rewarding factor that like you get for yourself, but at the same time could be a little extra pressure that you have because society is asking you to get better, or like your family says, oh, you should get more money for us, or I don't know. So I could feel that these things could be a little bit extrinsic. So what I was trying to do is like go deeper than that and just go to the real reason you want to learn English, but make it meaningful to you, and trying to find this intrinsic motivation. So when we talk about motivation here, I'm going to define it as the reason for people's actions, desires, and needs. And this reason for me, the important thing, as I just mentioned, was finding what is intrinsic, what really arises from within, something that you can find, for example, when you learn something, you find the process itself engaging. So like the person that just said that the teaching itself is fun, for example, that is what I was trying to looking for. So what characterizes an intrinsically motivated learner? So the first thing here is consciousness, actually. So individuals seen as being motivated primarily by their conscious thoughts and feelings. If they're conscious about their goals or what they want to do, this motivation is going to come to them more naturally. The second one here is value, of course. So like you only want to learn something that you need. And I guess this is key when you talk about like adult learners. Adult learners are more motivated when they see value of the things they learn. The third one here would be enjoyment. We mentioned it before. Someone else mentioned it before. If they find the process if you can enjoy the process, you can get more motivation out of it. The fourth one here would be actually goal setting. So people that from the start have clear goals, being short-term or longer-term goals, are more motivated than people without these goals. And the third one was flexibility. So a flexible and positive attitude towards language learning sustains this motivation. So what I tried to do, or was trying to do at that time, was trying to connect all these things and create something new to use in my company. So here is where coaching came. And actually, I'm going to quote a little bit, I think, Gabriela here now, because I needed a conversation-based process with a purpose to map and create optimal language acquisition or language usage related goals. A framework based on strategies, utilizing intrinsic motivation and developing learning awareness, where the learner claims ownership of their own development. I think that's the language coaching definition that Gabriela worked on that you can find on the ILCA website. And this was basically a perfect fit. So when I read this the first time, like last year, I was like, oh, this is very similar to what I'm doing. So it's like, oh, I love this. This is so great. So as a language coach, I first of all ask powerful questions to find gaps. I need to find what the learner is really missing and try to find how he can basically help himself, right, in a way. Then I use these core values that I find and try to connect them with really powerful goals to try to boost their motivation. And the extra, I guess, layer of help is building a framework with the learner that keeps them accountable and tracks their progress. So I'm going to explain this a little bit more. So an example here, so if you remember, this would be learner B. So when we started the coaching process with learner B, basically he just said, I don't have time to study. You want me to study more than 3 hours a week. I cannot really give you more than 3 hours. So the first lesson, I guess the coaching session was really hard because he was in this victim position that, no, I don't have time. This is just too hard. I don't know what to do. But then we try to start talking a little bit about you don't the concept of having time is a little bit abstract because we all have the same amount of time, but we just do different things with our time. So I asked him something like, what are you doing with your time? So after talking in the conversation, he realized that time management is really a decision. And then he can consciously decide what to do with his time. And he was like, yeah, actually, I do have time, but I'm just using this time in other things. So I tried to connect that feeling with discipline a little bit. So I told him, if you maybe resist some of these activities that could lead to short-term gratification in favor of more long-term goals, you can reach what I could call maybe happiness, or to these big things that you really want that you never do because you're always thinking short-term. So this for him was this big realization that he was just spending too much time playing games or watching Netflix or something. And then he said, no, I'm just too distracted at home. I need a different place to study. I'm going to study in the office in the morning. So I'm going to leave my home at 7 or so every day, just get to the office and study for 1 or 2 hours English. And we tried this and it changed everything. When he realized, no, I need to make time, I need to find discipline. So just by having this conversation, what happened after that was that he would just follow the program. And I think having this conversation was key to get his motivation out of him. And now I guess the thing that I ask him to do in the future is every time he feels he's losing this motivation, is just to visualize this goal, the goal that he set when he started the program, and trying to see what he can achieve if he reaches this goal. Or at the same time, even more powerful sometimes is what he could lose if he didn't. What is something that he really values that he could lose if he doesn't achieve this goal. And after this conversation, as I mentioned, his motivation improved a lot. So, well, basically, I know I'm not the only person doing this. Many people, just regular coaches, life coaches, or language coaches, or business coaches do this kind of thing. But I think not many people are doing it when you talk about learning a language. And something that I really like about especially this book and this approach is that they try to connect values, the expression of values, with the things that you do. In this case, the Conscious Business book by Fred Kaufman, they talk about business, but I was thinking you can actually connect values as well with learning and learning a language in this case. So basically, conscious coaching is a coaching method that uses values as guiding principles. And I added a little bit also to prioritize soft skill acquisition. So when you learn a little bit about these values, you can add a little bit of soft skill acquisition and how to make these values into actions. So in my coaching sessions, I help learners see English as a tool for communication, and then just connect that tool with the goals that they want to pursue. And I try to make them create goals that matter to them personally. This is very important during the session. The last thing, and I'm going to show you later, is that we created a flexible framework that they can use. So when they're learning English, they can enjoy the process, and at the same time, they can track the process. This for us, I guess, was very, very important because we needed to show the results, so we needed to track all these changes. Okay, so I'm going to show you now the values that I was talking about. So when we start the process, I ask learners to find their core values and commit to actions that honor those values. So specifically, if it's like a language coaching session, what I do is I ask learners to connect those values with concrete actions that facilitate their language acquisition process. So for example, the first one, for example, like I mentioned before with learner B, is discipline. So discipline could translate into an action that is to study 30 minutes every morning to create a study habit. So if this is the value they commit when they start their course, they have to show me that they're doing this every day, for example. Of course, it doesn't happen that, like, it doesn't go that well the first couple of weeks, but little by little, you can start building these habits. The second one would be integrity here. Integrity is connected with commitment. So for example, if we study for a month, I'm going to give you 8 homeworks and you cannot miss, you cannot miss any homework, basically. So never forget your homework would be your commitment. And this shows integrity. Another one could be humility. Humility here is, for example, being open-minded. So sometimes I bring to the lesson some ideas or some activities that for them, they're like, I don't think that's going to work. I don't learn like that. But what happens sometimes is that people don't like to try new things. So if they choose this humility value, they have to be open-minded and at least try to do these new things once. For example, I tried to do a lot of video recording with my learners, and a lot of them are very shy. So it's very difficult at first, but once they understand and they see the benefits, they just love it and they record. I had a learner that was recording 7 videos a week. He could be like a YouTuber or something. So it was really nice. And the last 2 here. So the next one would be vision. Vision is the ability to create milestones. So if they use a test score, for example, that's fine. They can just take a test every couple of months. Or if they track their study time, they have this vision that they want to study 7 hours a week, for example. So they can set these milestones. And the last one that I guess is the most important, and I make every learner choose this one basically when they start, is responsibility. Responsibility basically to take accountability and ownership of their learning process. And this translates in something like creating their own study plan. So of course, I'm going to help them doing that. And I'll show you in a second how we do it. But they have to create and they have to choose what they want to do. So just one more thing about conscious coaching. And this is something that actually Fred Kaufman of the book I just showed you before, he says that without gap, there is no coaching, and without commitment to action, there are no results. So it's very important that they find this gap. So if they just get to the lesson and they say, I have to study English because I have to, because they told me to, it's not going to work. So we need to really explore and find this gap and make sure that they understand there is a gap, and then they have to commit to action. So what I try to do in my sessions is try to help the learner become like a protagonist of their own learning. After that, I explain the importance of self-studying, because they cannot really rely on the teacher to teach them all the time. They have to try to find the answers for themselves. And the last thing here would be that, as I mentioned before, I try to also introduce soft skill acquisition as part of this coaching process. And I invite them to design their study plan incorporating this soft skill acquisition. So this is the weekly, I guess, framework or methodology that we use. I'm going to try to explain a little bit more about this. So we have what we call the core activities, and then we have the self-directed activities. The core activities are the ones that we may say like, oh, you have to do, but we are a little bit flexible with them depending on the learner. We have what we call 2 lessons a week. Still, this could be 30 minutes to an hour. It really depends. For busy people, sometimes we just try to accommodate 30 minutes. For other people with more time, we try to do 2 hours. And in these lessons, what we do is we have the coaching conversations. We don't have a coaching conversation every week. It's just when they're finding any issues. But when we start maybe one of the blocks, that would be every start of the month, or when we want to finish and do some sort of retrospective, we have these coaching conversations. Here we set the goals, we set some milestones, we check the milestones and things like that. In these weekly sessions as well, we create the study plan for this week. We find any blockers, maybe they don't understand something of the contents they're studying. We still conduct some training. It's not like the normal lesson, but like if we need to do a little bit like explain a grammar, like a structure of grammar or something, that happens as well. So we still have the trainer hat a little bit during these coaching sessions. And finally, we evaluate progress. So they have a weekly quiz or evaluation that they have to just use the words they learn, talk about the topics that they've been studying. So we have different evaluation activities weekly. The next one here would be the curated self-study. So for the curated self-study, basically we try to create, but more than create, I guess we try to find contents that are relevant to the learner based on their needs and their interests. We usually use blended learning for this. So basically videos, we try to use the internet as much as we can because there's like a lot of free contents out there that you can use. Of course, YouTube is very good. TED, I guess, is very popular. But lately, LinkedIn Learning has been great to learn English, actually, because you get these soft skills that I talked about before, and then you just learn English in the process. So I would really recommend that you look into LinkedIn Learning as a tool to teach English. And the great thing here, as I mentioned before, is like this virtuous circle that we create. Because, for example, they learn about time management, and then they apply what they learn about time management to studying English, or the same with like goal setting. So by learning these soft skills and just kind of prioritizing these values that they said before, continuing the process of learning English is going to be easier after every like iteration. So it's like, oh, you learn how to block your schedule, your calendar to study English. So the next week they start doing that for their English lesson as well. And of course, they're going to do that for work as well. So it's like a win-win situation. So I guess for the executives in my company, this has been really great. They're really happy with it. And finally, we have the free self-study. So as I mentioned before, studying something that is fun to you, that you really enjoy, was very important to keep motivation. So some people, I guess, oh yeah, I like the soft skills, and I like some of these videos that we curate for them, but they want to do their own thing. So actually, maybe I guess half of the program would be the 4 hours here is just free self-study. They can just find any podcast they want, any YouTube video, any book they want to read, and we just kind of give them some guidelines or some templates to do some sort of work, some sort of activities, but they choose the content. And people feel really motivated when they can come up with their own ideas to create contents or create their own even homeworks. I just tell them, hey, you have a list of like 20 things you can do as homework. You just choose one or add your own. So they're really excited when I just propose these kind of things. And the last thing that we have down here is gamification. Gamification has become, I guess, really popular in language education for the last couple of years, I guess, or more. We don't go that deep really into gamification, but what we do is that we give them points quickly for every activity that they finish. And I'm going to show this in a second later. So now I'm just going to show you some examples. For example, this is curated self-study. This is something that we prepared as a team, and we just show them in this one is in the second week, I guess. This is about creating SMART goals. If you don't know what SMART goals are, are goals that are specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time-bound. These acronyms really change, so maybe you can just wiki it later, but SMART goals are really powerful, so we always encourage people to create SMART goals. This is an example of a curated self-study homework. For this one, people read an article that sometimes we choose or sometimes they choose. They just find words they don't know. But the most important part here is they have to make a video to summarize the article with their takeaways. Then they watch a different video about the same topic, and then we have a discussion, or they have to prepare like a presentation. So usually these topics are related to their jobs. So these are topics about like management, for example, because all of our participants are managers. But you could just choose topics that are relevant to your participants. And these are examples of the free self-study activities. The first one, for example, this is learner A. He really liked Apple. So he wants to organize, actually he does, he organizes his own iOS conference in Japan, like tech conference. So he really likes to find about the new AirPods, the new iOS release, or the new iPhone, things like that. So he made a presentation about this, and he was like Steve Jobs presenting to like me and a couple of people about the new Apple products. That was really fun. The other one here, this is a YouTube channel for people that live in Japan, I guess. It's very popular. It's called Bilingual or something like Bilingual Girl. Well, so this channel is very good for Japanese learners, I guess, or people that speak Japanese that want to learn English. So he just watches these videos every week and just makes a summary of them. Okay, so let's go now to the data. So this is what we call the monthly tracker. So I don't think I have time to go into a lot of detail about this today, but basically they have study points. So each time they send one of these output, one of these homeworks, they get points for this. Then they track their study hours. We really rely on them to track their study hours. So if they say they studied 5 hours, we trust them, but hopefully all of them are honest, or we'll find out later with the evaluation anyways, but yeah. And then this is the evaluation score. For this next one, so you can really see here, but this is full of like drop-down menus. So in the activity part, they can just choose what they want to do. We give them like a menu of things to do. And some of these activities are like self-directed activities. So basically they can choose what to do in these activities. They just have to put here their completion time. And then the coach goes to this sheet and just kind of checks if they've done this. They check the recording, they check the whatever output they produced. And then once the coach like puts like a circle here, you get the points. And these points show in this previous slide. So this is the way we track the points. And this is the gamification part I talked about before. So basically we did this. So we had this first coaching session. We followed using these sheets, these trackers, and we did this process for 6 months now. And basically I'm going to show you now the results, first the qualitative results of these people that finished the course. So learner A, that was B1 low, he reached B2 proficiency now, and he's really, really motivated. Even now, he continues sending these homeworks. Even though he technically finished the program, every week I still get one of his homeworks. So I don't have time now to check this because he kind of just graduated, but he's really motivated. So every week he's still sending all these homeworks. So it's really impressive. So if you want to read, this is some of the things he said about the session. Maybe I want to highlight here the number 3, that he says that the contents are related to his tasks that really increase his motivation. So when you use contents or when you study with things that really resonate or connect to the learner, this really helps with motivation. Okay, so I'm going to show you now learner B. So learner B reached B2 as well. He reached it a little bit later than learner A, even though he studied a little bit more. So he was just a slower learner, but his confidence level drastically improved. Something that maybe I think you read before on the slide at the start was that he was using interpreter for most of his meetings with English speakers, but now he does all his meetings in English. So that he couldn't believe that. Like, I don't know if he said like, I don't know if my level is really better now, but I can talk to people in English now. So I guess it is, but he couldn't believe that he had the motivation to do it. And this was because like we had these coaching sessions, we just gave him all these tools. He was just recording videos every week. So just by just doing that every week, his motivation just went up because he kind of got used to listening to his own voice in English. And I think this was very, very important. So yeah, these are his testimonials after he finished the program. So just to finish here, I just made a quick comparison of, so according to Cambridge, actually, it says that it takes around 200 hours, but these are guided learning hours, basically lessons. I couldn't really find a lot of data about just self-study hours. But what we try to do here is to get 200 hours of a combination of guided study hours. I would call like the coaching sessions or this lesson time a guided study hour. But basically they have 65 and 90 self-study hours. And we got very similar results to what Cambridge predicted here. So this was very interesting because I don't know, like what they wanted us to do in the company was to get there fast, but we didn't have the resources to pay teachers for everyone. So doing this in the same amount of time, or I guess faster even, with just self-study, I think was really good for us. And we were very surprised actually that it went that well. No, actually here, yeah, there are some breaks and holidays that may be not included here. So this is roughly the progress that we got from these learners. They were taking tests, like I said, every week, but we had like these big tests that we did 3 times to kind of check bigger increases in CFR. One thing that I have to mention here is that the test that we use is an in-house test that we also made. So there could be a little bit of bias in this test. However, we have the recordings from the first test and the last test, and just comparing by a lot of metrics, it's clear that they improved a lot. Actually, one of them also took the TOEIC, that is very popular in Japan, and he also got a pretty high score there. I don't know how reliable that one is, but he was very happy with his result in the TOEIC as well. And these are the stats for the learners. Basically, they were studying an average of 8.5, I guess, hours a week. They finished most of their tasks. They were really happy with the coaching and they liked the contents. These contents are the curated contents. The free contents, of course, like they chose them. So there were things that they liked to do. So as a conclusion here, I really believe that it's very important to find ways to have motivated learners because a motivated learner really wants to learn and really enjoys the learning process. As I mentioned before, my job as a trainer or as a coach is not really teaching, it's helping other people learn. And to do that, I have to create an environment where people feel safe to set bold goals and where they can track their progress. So this framework has given me the tools to find people's true motivation and keep them engaged. And at the same time, I am helping them become better managers. So this was really impactful as well in our company. Actually, thanks to this program, my company is going to start actually next month a full L&D program, not just for English, but for leadership skills and other things. And this was born in part thanks of this like coaching program, thanks to this coaching program. So we were really happy with this. So I mentioned Learner B, actually, that I was going to present here today. And he just said this, like, oh, I want you to share this. So I put it here. And it's really interesting, like, he came out of nowhere with this, but like, this thinking in English is something that seemed very interesting to me because by doing all this thinking about his values and his goals, he was really thinking in English. So that was very, very interesting. So I wanted to share this with you today. So what is the next thing here? So once upon a time, I guess we believed that teachers were the unique source of truth, right? But now our job is to create learners that have inquisitive minds and they're like hungry for knowledge. And if we allow them to think in a new language, they can really own what they say. So this was, I guess, just an introduction. So if you have any questions, maybe reach to me in the future, or let me know when we finish today. But basically what I want your takeaway to be is that you encourage your learners to reflect consciously on their learning. And I'm really sure that if you do this, you can find meaningful connections to help them bridge their motivation gap. So that's it for today. Thank you very much.
Okay, and thank you, David, very much for this. I think it was an amazing journey that you've talked about today. And yes, if you've got any questions, please start writing them in the chat relating to anything that you have heard. It can be some kind of feedback or a question. I'm seeing things like applause for David. Thanks, David. So quite a lot of positive feedback coming here. I'd just like to say, I think it was amazing to see the background to the whole coaching program that David has created, and also the methodology and how it worked. And I think it's a really, really generous thing to be sharing this program with everybody, because it's something that you and your team, I guess, put together single-handedly. So it's yeah, I think it's an amazing thing to have that. And the fact that it's very unique and flexible, and that it really is a learner-led process, because the majority of the learning is really not working or happening when you're there, right? So that's just about 1/3 or even 1/5, or I don't know percentages, so how much of the learning that actually takes place. So it really goes to show that if you can increase the motivation, as David says, then your learners can really surpass quite a lot of limiting beliefs and barriers that they have, and their confidence is going to soar. And I think that's what we always come back to. It's about confidence. So believing that you can do that work, the studying and to increase your language. So that's really amazing. I'm going to look into the chat at this point, okay? And I'm going to see here what we have here. A lot of wonderful session, and thank you, very motivating session for us educators. I don't particularly see any questions here. So if you have any questions, or maybe if somebody would like to unmute themselves, but just one at a time, then we'd be happy to hear the questions. We're just getting a lot of thank yous. Any questions here? Okay, we have one. Okay, David, I'm interested to know how you were able to convince them to talk about their feelings on learning English. That's a good one.
Yeah. So like maybe, so to connect about feelings first, I think I went to the goal itself first, like, okay, you need to learn English. Why do you need to learn English? And the first answer is like, oh, they told me I have to learn English. So it's like, okay, but forget that. Let's go more than that. Like, what can you do? Oh, maybe I can travel. It's like usually the second answer. So it's like, okay, but if you can travel, what can you get? Oh, I'm going to get, I don't know, maybe meeting new people. And then if you meet new people, I'm going to connect with more people. And like, just by this question, and then how would you feel if you connect with more people? I would feel happy. So like, just by like a coaching process, basically getting deeper and deeper into kind of expressing their feelings, it's a little bit challenging, because like another thing is like Japanese people don't really talk about their feelings that much. So there's like the cultural barrier as well. But this is like basically being curious. Like, I just want to know more about you, connect with you, and just understand why you do the things you want to do. Another way to go is also maybe connecting with the mission of the company. Is a good one. So you work for this company, and this company has a mission. Do you know the mission? Some people do, some people don't. But if they do, you just go into the mission. Do you believe in this mission? How do you feel working here? And like, just connecting this with things that are more relatable to them is a good way to start.
Okay, so the question here is, so you did a series of questions that led to the response that you desired. So kind of like finding the intrinsic motivation, I guess. Right.
Yeah,
okay.
something like that, yes.
Okay, okay. Any other questions here? So I guess everyone is kind of saturated with all this information, and there's a lot
It's
of
a lot of information, sorry.
no, no, I think it's absolutely fine. And what I'd be curious to know is, you said that you've actually got a green light, so you've managed to convince the management of this company basically to work with a coaching framework for further learning, right?
Yeah.
Is that correct? Okay.
Yeah, so basically everything started with a team that we had that was called the Global Operations Team. Initially, this team was doing interpretation and translation. So, but at some point, my company, one of their values of my company is go bold. They wanted to say, no, we want to go more than just translating things. We want people to actually speak the language. So a part of this team transformed into what today is the language education team, but it was a very small team. So the first 3 months I joined, we were just teaching English. But then they said, oh, actually, we need to start a project to teach the whole engineering organization English. So I used to have like 10 students. Now we need to have 160. I was like, okay, I cannot teach like lessons anymore. So basically we came up with this and we talked to the executives, and they said, okay, we'll give you a year, try it. I guess they were very flexible, so that we were lucky, I guess, at that point. But we started showing results every 3 months, and the results were pretty good. So we got the green light to do it.
All right. Okay. Okay. I'm just putting in here into the chat the YouTube channel for Ilka, where the recording will be available. So if everybody wants to, then they can listen again, okay, and gather all the information that's going on here. Okay.
Yeah, thank
so
you.
we will be closing. We will finish on time. There's one last question. What's the name of the book that you mentioned? And I'm happy to write it into the chat box.
Yeah, the book is called Conscious Business by Fred Kaufman. I would recommend all of his books. Like his latest book is also called The Meaning Revolution. And they really go into using coaching connected with like finding meaning in your life and how to apply this for like a company. So it's really interesting.
All right, okay. And there's one more question here. Now they're starting to come. Okay, so how to motivate the learners towards learning who are in those who are in personal stress? So how can coaching cope with stress, I guess? That's a tough one.
So yeah, so there's like a fine line like between, because when you do coaching, I'm just talking about like regular coaching, you can deal with all of these issues that if you resolve, they're going to get rid of the stress or like the underlying condition, not condition, I guess, like the underlying situation that prevents them from studying something, right? So I would just do a coaching session to try to understand what is really stressful to them. In the model that I use, I always try to make them what we call players. Basically, okay, how are you contributing to this stress? Like, because I cannot get rid of the stress itself if it's outside of you, but maybe you can change your own behavior to reduce the stress. So I guess I would just do like a normal coaching session first to try to understand the stress, and hopefully that will lead me to get more time to study, for example.
Right. Okay. So that's valuable. Once again, we'll be finishing now. Okay. If there are no more questions here, because we have to close. So thank you everyone for being here. Thank you, David, for the talk itself. And as I said, the recording will be available. And one last thing, if you're interested in coaching, and it seems like a really great idea to incorporate a coaching mindset and how it works, then Ilka is very happy to support you in that. And yeah, as organizers, we know that a lot of people do join our courses with the intent to use the coaching mindset. And some of the things that David was talking about here so that imagine that you could be supporting your learners, your students in this way. And it's really an amazing feeling. I do a lot of language coaching myself with my clients, and the feedback is similar. So imagine getting this kind of feedback from your students, this confidence and this, I mean, it's just joy, the joy of learning a language, and that's such an incredible thing. So if you have the time this summer or in autumn, then we're happy to see you at our courses and do join. And thank you very much. And we'll be finishing for now. So thank you for everything, and do come to our next event next month also. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Gabriela.
Okay. Thank you, David, for being here. Bye-bye. Okay. Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Okay. Okay. All right. Okay. Thank you, everyone. Goodbye, and I'll be stopping here. Okay.